song.
I think sexuality is so fluid. Like you can always be changing how you feel. And
True.
It's also like
which is what's so fucking annoying about dumbass conservatives on the internet who are like, oh my god, these people are so confused about their gender. One day they're non-binary, one day they're agender, one day they're a woman. Like, when will it stop? Figure it out. Like, no, dumbass. Have you ever thought about the idea that human beings change and develop over time? Shocking, I know. But yes, people go through a variety of different paths in life, and they might at one point consider themselves heterosexual and then eventually understand themselves to be homosexual or pansexual or bisexual, whatever else, right? Like, come on, don't be silly. So this is a Jubilee video. Who is not morbin? Now, I don't know if you know anything about me or this channel, but I have been morbing for a long time. I have been on the front lines, the ground floor for the Morbius. I'm just kidding. We're gonna watch the Have You Questioned Your Sexuality? Lesbians versus Straight Women Middle Ground video from Jubilee. Came out 2 days ago. Now, of course, I do not identify as a lesbian, nor do I identify as a heterosexual woman, but I am interested in the perspectives of either person as it pertains to this video. And obviously, you know, I talk about gender, sexuality a lot, so it'll be interesting to see what's up. Of course, what's missing from this conversation between gay women and heterosexual women is the perspective of a non-binary, agender, amoebic, trans blob. But you know, you didn't ask for it, but you're gonna get it. I mean, what do you want from me to do?
Why does everyone always say like, oh, you look like a lesbian? What is that? What does a lesbian look like?
Well, that's misogyny, isn't it? So quickly to answer that question is because the normative position in society is that if you are a woman, you're expected to be feminine. And if you're feminine, then you're supposed to be weak, docile, submissive to men, et cetera, et cetera. And if you go further and further right, the property of men, right? So if you go outside of that acceptable range of gender expression as a woman, then you're going to start facing pushback. And usually that'll look like, you know, oh, you're so aggressive, you must be a lesbian, you must be gay. There's no way you're a heterosexual woman because you're acting like a man, so therefore you must be interested in women. The reason why that's the assumption is because dumbasses in our society will be like, oh, well, men have to be with women and women have to be with men. So if you're going to act like a man, then you're probably interested in women then. So then you're a lesbian. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. It's irrational because that's what bigotry is. It's an infection in your mind that makes you completely allergic to any amount of factual, logical understanding of a variety of issues and rather clouds your brain with feelings and, you know, being mad and all this kind of stuff. And it's not good for you. Bigotry, not even once. It's a bad drug. And it makes you and everyone around you feel worse.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. It's normal for straight women to feel some attraction towards women.
True and based. Imagine not agreeing with this prompt. There are so many women that I have known in my life like who are heterosexual, but they expressed some kind of aesthetic attraction to another woman. Now, obviously, this could take the form of jealousy or envy, admiration, like, wow, I would like to look like that. There's a variety of ways they could do it, but I do think that a lot of people might have more than that, like an actual attraction to them. So, for instance, if you are a heterosexual woman and you do find other women, and usually this is going to be, if you are heterosexual, it's going to be like an exceptional case. Maybe not. That's my assumption. But like, that could inform other things that you look for in your preferred partner, which would be assumedly men then. If you're straight, right? So like maybe you like men who are a little bit more feminine. Maybe you like men who are a lot a bit more feminine. You know what I mean? But you're still straight. They still identify as men, but you're more attracted to the femininity. I think a lot of people are less so attracted to the genitalia of or chromosomes of the people they're attracted to, but rather they're attracted to the presentation of that person as it pertains to their femininity, their masculinity, their androgyny. So like, I think this is totally normal. And because we're talking about sexuality broadly, at least I am, it's also normal for straight men to feel some attraction towards men. And usually this will be the case. I get these comments all the time. Oh my God, I thought I was straight and I think I still am straight, but I find you attractive, me. And it's because I'm feminine. I present fairly femininely. And because a lot of people are first and foremost attracted to femininity, makes sense, and I think that's fair. And you could even be a man who finds other like masculine men attractive too. Even if you don't find masculine people wholesale attractive, I do think there are ways you could do that as well. I don't know how you could disagree. Be curious.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah, this was a Morbius sweep. Of course it was.
it's completely normal. Women are attractive. We are
True.
cute. We are hot. We're fiery. And yes, we're attracted to each other.
I've actually
Real.
been on maybe like 2 dates with women because women are attractive and they're beautiful people.
Nice.
My feeling has always been that it's because I've had a past relationship with a man that was significant. Folks have said, well, you should identify as bisexual, right? And I'm like, interesting, because ultimately to me.
So that's cringe. You should identify. Fuck you. Should identify. Tell me how I'm supposed to identify. Suck my dick. Or I guess, whatever this person would say in regards to that. That's silly.
Calling yourself a label is not so much a labeling as it is an identifying, and it's like you end up choosing. And so you can stop where you want, right? Like, I think there's the journey, and then for me it was like, no, I stopped at lesbian and I'm staying here. Yeah. So that's the word that I'm using.
Nice.
I do have a follow-up question. Have you thought about women while masturbating?
Yes.
Ooh.
Again, women are sexy. Even for me,
True.
and I'm a straight woman, I don't always like straight, can I say the P word on here? Porn. I don't
I
necessarily.
was going to say people. So I think porn that is directed to suit the interests of women or bottoms generally is sorely lacking in the broader sphere. Now, obviously, if you look at like some amateur stuff, you might find it. But usually a lot of porn is filmed through the perspective of the top, the person doing the penetrating, usually the person who is the dominant one. And that's kind of lame. Because there's a lot of people out there that aren't really interested in that perspective. They want to see porn from the perspective of their preferred position of being maybe submissive, maybe the bottom, or maybe dominant and the bottom. You know what I mean? It just seems to be a lack of it because a lot of porn is directed at heterosexual men. So I would not be shocked that there would be some good lesbian porn out there that would be really interesting to a heterosexual woman.
Necessarily like straight porn.
Don't they say, like statistically, that women in general, straight or not, watch gay porn because you're looking at the woman having
love that.
pleasure.
Wait, do we have 4 lesbians and only 3 heterosexual women? They've kind of tipped the scales on this one.
It's that pleasure sensation that we're looking for that I don't always
They're outnumbered.
get when I'm watching men and women.
That actually makes sense because I was a late bloomer and I found out what porn was when I was 17. When I saw it,
I like how in our society, and I don't know that there's necessarily anything wrong with this, but like a late bloomer is finding out about porn when you're 17. I feel like that's like an expected thing for like a 17, 18-year-old person to be, having already looked at. You know what I mean? Like maybe back in the day before it was as accessible as being on the internet, you'd have to like hide like a Playboy mag or like a Victoria's Secret catalog that you stole from your mom when she wasn't looking under your bed. But now that we have the internet and now that you can get porn on demand for free, I don't know, I feel like 17 is, pretty late. At least for me, like when I was going through puberty and when I was in like my early teens, I was looking into all that. I was like, ooh, what is all this stuff? And I was able to, find access to it. I feel like that's just like a thing that we've come to expect in society. So like 17 being a late bloomer, that's just funny to me. I don't know.
oh, sex is for the man because that's kind of how it looks.
True,
It's
that's
for
fucked.
the man. It's for the man to feel good. It never like clicked to me like, oh, you're supposed to also feel something. So I understand what you said when you mean that.
There's a lot of, I forget, there's this one dude, they got like fucking full leg sleeve tattoos or some shit like that. And that guy like focuses a lot on like pleasuring the woman that he's with. And like, that's like one of the few. There seems to be a lacking amount of porn through the perspective of trying to make the woman feel good. Like, I think that's the problem with like big porn studios. I think this is why amateur porn is a lot more interesting for people. Because a lot of those fucking porn videos that you'll see from like professional studios is just the man going jackhammering the woman. And the woman who is an actor, a sex worker, a porn actor, is meant to act as if like this is like the best pleasure that she's ever felt. And it's just a man going the whole time, which, some people it might be enough, but I feel like for most people it's not. So like essentially, like if porn does make a lot of men who like heterosexual tops have a warped perception of what they're supposed to do in sex, or they're just supposed to like jackhammer the fucking vagine and it's only about the men having pleasure, then it would also be expected that women who would like to be in that position as the woman in the film would also have a warped perspective in that, oh, well, as the woman in the engagement, I'm supposed to focus entirely unpleasuring the man, and like my pleasure is like secondary or non-existent, and that's cringe as well. Like sex, I think, unless it's your specific kink, is best done and enjoyed by the consenting parties trying their best to pleasure each other in an equal way. I don't know.
Girly girl and tomboy are problematic terms.
I will say they can be, but they're not inherently. That, I think, is my take. So if it is your take that all women are supposed to be so-called girly girls, and that's how you engage with broader society, and you condemn gender non-conforming expressions that women have, like being a tomboy or even being a butch lesbian, and like you have a problem with that, then obviously that's where that comes in, right? I don't think that the terms are necessarily like inherently bad, but I do think that they can be. So for instance, there are people out there that say femboy is a slur, and I don't think that's true. I think it can be used like one if there's a trans woman out there, but they have some more masculine aspects of them that contradict the societal expectation for women, and you call that person a femboy because of that, then that's misgendering, and you shouldn't do that. And in that way, you could use it like a slur, right? So essentially what I say about the term femboy, you shouldn't call anybody that term unless you know they're okay with being called it. If they've told you they're okay with it, or if they self-identify with it, or whatever else. If they tell you they're not okay with it, then you shouldn't call them that. And it's the same for tomboy.
Growing up, I was very hyper femme. I got Easter dresses and wore them year round, those big like tulle Easter dresses.
I did that too.
The best.
Pog.
But I was then looked at as a girly girl. So it's like, she can't be gay if she looks this way.
I think it's hard when you tell someone what they are.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that I'm like, that could be problematic, because like you said, it fuzzes
that's what I
it
said.
for you. And that's why I think it could be problematic,
Based.
because you can't put someone in a certain place. They have to do it themselves.
I think if you're self-labeling, it's fine. But like putting someone else
Agreed.
into it, not great.
We need to get some homophobic people on this panel. Where is the homophobic straight woman? The homophobic lesbian? Fuck it. Why do all these people agree with each other? God damn it.
Hi, my name's Claire. I'm 23 years old, and I am team lesbian.
Team lesbian?
Heteronormativity is definitely a problem. It's when you grow up being assumed as straight. That definitely happened for me. I grew up with only straight role models, watching only straight people on TV. All I saw was straight culture. And I had those feelings start to develop that I thought were wrong, and I was repressing and pushing them down. So I definitely...
And that's the goal, by the way. We've talked about this a lot on my channel, but that's literally the goal. The reason why people on the right, like Ben Shapiro, whenever there's a queer person in any media, even in the most sanitized way possible, that's an affront to a person like Ben Shapiro, because he likes the fact that cisgender, heterosexual identities are the norm for men and women, and he likes it when the media that is out there reinforces that. People on the right understand very well, and it's actually been an active effort by a lot of them, either to show people the media or produce the media itself. They understand that those cishet expressions of people in media is an effective way to normalize and make it feel like anything outside of that is abnormal. To make it feel like anything that deviates from that cishet norm is weird, abnormal, to be condemned, to be repressed, as this person says, and they're aware of that. So on the other side of that coin, they are also very aware of the fact that if there are more queer representations of people in media, then more and more people will see being queer as normal and will become more amicable to the liberating of those queer identities from the oppression that they face. And that's why they bristle so much at it. Like Ben Shapiro in his review of The Batman literally said that a thing that's considered woke means that there is a black, brown, or queer person in it. That's it. For a while, it was just a dog whistle. But in that video, he actually admitted it. I wonder if I can find it real quick. Ah, it's wokeness. Okay. So here we have it. This is Ben Shapiro reviews The Batman. Spoilers. He was big mad about the new Batman film.
The biggest problem with the film is not the wokeness. Yes, there's some woke touches. You have Catwoman, who is a woman of color, who is, of course, good. And you have the black female mayor, who is good. And you have the black Jim Gordon, who is good. Every white character is apparently bad, like all of them. Fine, whatever. I don't really care about that. That's fine.
Woke is when Catwoman is brown. Woke is when Commissioner Gordon is black. Woke is when the mayor that we're supposed to see in a positive light, the mayoral candidate, is a black woman. That's what's woke. He literally admits that that is what woke means. It's not simply that, oh, they're trying to force these kinds of ideas on people and that's why the woke is bad. It's literally just black and brown people existing in media being depicted in a positive light. That's it.
Compulsive heteronormativity is a problem in society.
True.
We have a lot more queer role models in all our communities.
True.
So I think there's a split here to be made between being womanly and being feminine, right? Like I feel womanly, but I'm masculine in terms of my presentation. And I also I'm gonna say this, being feminine has emotional qualities and being masculine has emotional qualities.
Yeah, the expectation is I must be submissive. I must be the one because I am female by default. I'm the submissive one. I am very dominant. I'm dominant in
Let's
the way that I
go.
present myself and when I'm in a room.
More dominant feminine people, okay? More dominant feminine women as well. And in fact, more dominant masculine women. More dominant women in general. Believe me, folks, we're gonna make every single woman dominant. You've never seen anything like it. It's gonna be the best. It's gonna make your head spin. They're gonna make your head spin when they smack you across the face when they're fucking you with a strap on. Believe me, folks, I've had it done to me as well. Sorry.
And so men, especially, they're the ones who will suggest. I'm a black woman and I'm a dominant black woman, so I must be gay. I must be a lesbian. I must be a lesbian.
What is that though? Like, why does everyone always say like, oh, you look like a lesbian? What is that? What does a lesbian look like?
I have to say, for societal conception of what a lesbian is supposed to look like, which is usually like a more masculine woman, this person who identifies as a lesbian, I would say not clockable, fairly feminine. Checkmate, gay theists.
My mom, when I came out, my mom was like, okay, well, you're a lesbian.
And I would say, now I don't speak for all lesbians because I am not one, okay? I would never do such a thing. However, I will say it's probably likely that lesbians around the world would be pretty upset if all lesbians had to be masculine. Now, of course, it would be for the lesbians who want to be feminine, but also lesbians love feminine women as well. Shockingly, really.
So I was gonna ask you guys a question. Like, do you feel girly girl or tomboy?
So for me, it's like a spectrum. It's like in flux all the time. Like sometimes I want to be hyper feminine. Sometimes I want to be more tomboyish, right? Sometimes I even want to be a little bit more masculine, though that's not the usual thing. But like, it's a broad range. And I feel like that's probably the same for a lot of people too. Like, it's not all the time that people want to be in a certain aesthetic. There are women out there that'll be like, dressed in the most extravagant, beautiful, feminine dresses that have ever existed, crafted by literal cherub angels. And they will also find that they enjoy wearing and look really good in menswear, like formal wear, for instance. There's a lot of like super feminine women out there that will wear suits, which is not expected for women. Now, usually they're tailored for women and all that kind of thing, but it's still a more masculine aesthetic. Like, I'm pretty sure most, if not all people, have some spectrum of feminine or masculine that they like to engage with, and it could be slim or it could be vast, but I would be shocked if people were like directly in a certain hole and that was it.
I present like in a feminine way, but I feel like internally, I don't know if I'm masculine, but I feel like I embody a lot of like male traits where I'm like, I think with logic and I'm like strong and don't really like say how I feel, but like externally I'm feminine, but also it does like...
Oh yeah, and that's fine for you, Jesse. Like, if you're okay with the old-fashioned or traditional gender roles for your own person, if you identify with those things, then that's no problem. The people that fight against those so-called traditional gender roles don't want to make it so that people who enjoy being that traditional archetype can't do it anymore. The fight is against forcing that on literally everybody because we know there are people that don't subscribe to those things, right? Like Candace Owens, oh yeah, for the menswear thing, yeah. Which is funny too, because it contradicts, her own perspectives about men shouldn't wear dresses or whatever. And yet there's Candace Owens, a self-identified woman who is wearing menswear, who is wearing formal wear that looks like men's suits. Come on.
Pose difficulty when I'm out, like wanting to look at girls. A lot of time, like I'm making eye contact and they're like, why is this girl looking at me?
Like, yeah, we've all had that thing where we're like, why is that girl staring at me? Did she not like me? Like, is she mean? Like, what's going on? Maybe she
Oh, that's true.
Maybe she
That's
just likes
true.
me.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
she thinks I'm cute. And I'll think that next time. Maybe I'm like,
True. That's actually really interesting. So like a lot of the time, if there is a woman looking at another woman, depending, I guess, on like on their resting face or how they're looking, you might be like, did I do something wrong? Like, do you have a problem with me? What's up? But it's actually true. Yeah, though they could be a lesbian, right? Like they could find you attractive, but because that's not normalized in society, you don't really think of it that way. So like imagine the amount of people who had that thought, who could have like talked to that person and been like, yo, what's up? And they could have been like, oh my God, I just find you so pretty, blah, blah, blah. And then like, imagine how many relationships that could have been had that were missed. You know, how many opportunities for really cool human moments to happen. Very cringe.
Hi, I'm Dia and I'm straight. Whenever I saw Waka Flocka Flame for the first time, I knew that that was my lane. I did go through a phase where I was trying to see if I was interested in girls, but then it usually always led back to men.
So my question is, there are definitely people who identify as women that look like Waka Flocka Flame. Absolutely there is. And they might even have a more masculine personality as well. So my question would be, how attached are you to the idea that that person identifies as a man or not? This is always the question that I'm thinking of. Because like, from my own experience as a person, I realized over time that I find femininity first and foremost attractive. And then the way the person identifies, the genitalia that they have, their chromosomes, those things I don't even think about. But if I did, they would be secondary to that feminine presentation because I find femininity attractive. It could be the same for masculinity, of course, for anybody. So that's what I want to ask. And like I say, I get comments and DMs and all this kind of shit all the time from usually cis het men who've been like, wow, I thought I was straight until I saw you. And it just seems to be the case. I don't know. I'm just saying, you might want to think about it.
I have been confused by my sexual orientation.
I have to say for me, I have not, because I didn't know I could be anything other than straight for a while. You can call that a kind of confusion if you want, but I was not necessarily attuned to the idea that I might be like pansexual or whatever, because I didn't find masculinity attractive, and I still don't. Right? So for me, a person who is assigned male at birth, who is socialized as a man, the expectation for me is to be attracted to feminine people. And wouldn't you know it, women are the demographic that are usually expressing themselves femininely. So because of that, I was always like, oh, I'm straight because I find women attractive and I'm a man. So fuck, there we go. We've done it. And then I discovered that, oh shit, there are men out there that essentially just look like women, but they identify as men. And I still find them attractive. And then I did the soul searching I just talked about earlier. And then I figured out, hey, I'm pansexual actually. I am attracted to femininity. So I don't think I was ever confused. It was more so that I just didn't have the knowledge. I just didn't know. And also, like, when it comes to representations of people in media, I also didn't see people that identified as men that were expressing themselves femininely that I might find attractive, which is why that kind of representation is good. You find any men attractive that aren't femme? Usually there are feminine characteristics of overall masculine men that I might be willing to find more attractive. So like the common example is Geralt from The Witcher. Like this is a fairly masculine man, but he's got some more feminine characteristics. He's got longer hair, clean shaven, all this kind of shit. So like he's a little bit more attractive to me than the standard man with like short hair and whatnot. But even then, like he's not super attractive to me. It's just a little bit more, you know what I mean? So like when you think of who's the one from Castlevania? Is it Alucard? I think it's Alucard. This dude is still pretty masculine, right? He's still pretty masculine. And in the show, I don't know, I haven't watched the show, I intend to. But in the show, people in chat can tell me, does he like present himself like in a masculine way in terms of his personality, his mannerisms and all this kind of shit? I don't actually, he's a fucking vampire, I think. So maybe not. Vampires are usually more femme. But like the fact that we've got long hair, we got a more like feminine like jawline, right? He's like clean shaven, all this kind of shit. More and more like I find that this person would be more attractive. So like when it comes to like how masculine does a person have to be, it's essentially like anime pretty boys is about as masked as I would get. So people like fucking Alucard. So like if these people exist in real life, if they're vampires, pog, but I would be shocked about that. But if people that look like this exist in real life, well then yeah, I'd be probably attracted to them. But the personality also has a lot to do with it. Because not only am I attracted to feminine aesthetics in terms of physical presentation, I am also attracted to feminine personality types and things like that. But like, it's a spectrum. Like, it's a give and take. It's more of like a I'll know it when I see it kind of thing. You know what I mean?
I mean, personally, like, I'm still confused every day, and I think sexuality is so fluid. Like, you can always be changing how you feel. And
True.
It's also like
which is what's so fucking annoying about dumbass conservatives on the internet who are like, oh my god, these people are so confused about their gender. One day they're non-binary, one day they're agender, one day they're a woman. Like, when will it stop? Figure it out. Like, no, dumbass. Have you ever thought about the idea that human beings change and develop over time? Shocking, I know. But yes, people go through a variety of different paths in life, and they might at one point consider themselves heterosexual and then eventually understand themselves to be homosexual or pansexual or bisexual, whatever else, right? Like, come on, don't be silly.
this attachment to still holding on hope that maybe I'll like a guy, or maybe like I could feel something with a guy. And even like identifying on like the lesbian side was hard for me because I still hold on to that label of being bisexual because I've dated men and because I still know I can like make myself in a way like men. So it's like, do I like men because I like men or because I've grown up thinking I should?
Because they gave us that dream that you're supposed to find that Prince Charming and you're
True.
supposed to fall in love and have these kids.
Speaking of grooming, well, the more proper term is indoctrination. The way that Disney has warped the perception of young girls across the world about what their interests and relationships are supposed to look like when they get older is weird as hell, man. Like, if you want to target the actual indoctrination of children that Disney does, it's not simply having a queer character that exists in the media. It's shit like Prince Charming. You got to wait for your Prince Charming and he's going to, you know, sweep you off your feet. And then your entire life is to be dedicated to that guy and whatever else. Like, come on. If you actually care about tackling the issue of Disney and its problematic elements in regards to indoctrinating kids. You could say it's the same for men in Disney, that they have to be the Prince Charming. Yeah, but it's also the case that there's more representations of men in Disney films in different kinds of ways, right? So like you've got the Prince Charming, but you've also got people like Gaston, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Aladdin. Like there's a bunch of different kind of archetypes in the early Disney films of men, and there's just a lot less different kinds of archetypes of women, which is curious. It's almost like there are people in society, usually men, who want to format society in such a way that men specifically, cis men, cis heterosexual men even, have all of the freedom they want, and then everybody else who isn't a cis heterosexual man has limited or no freedom. I wonder if there's a word for that. Anyway.
In my life, I had this plan out, like I'm gonna get married to a surfer guy, we're gonna have all these cute little kids, and it's gonna be great. And I went on a date. It was my first date with a boy in high school, and I was like, he's gonna hold my hand at the movie theater. Oh my gosh, it's gonna happen. And he touched me and I did this. And my body knew before my head knew. Queer was not used that often, middle school, high school. The derogatory term was gay. That's gay, she's gay, that meant lame. So for me, I'm like, I'm not gay, I don't think I'm lame. So fell into queer, gay, lesbian as I got comfortable and deconstructed those labels myself.
I think that
this person gives very wholesome vibes. I love people like this. They're just like a beacon of positive energy.
Family does play a huge role. I was married to a man for 6 years. It was a little bit hard for me to actually like
I bet.
have the courage to come out because I do.
Making a joke about having to be married to a man for 5 years. What a fucking absolute hell that would have to. I'm just kidding. Critical support for all the men out there that watch me, okay? Some, I assume, are good people.
I tried to force myself into, you know, being in a heterosexual relationship for the sake of my family, for the sake of the what if it doesn't work out with a woman, or me being scared and terrified. So I think that confusion is a very normal thing in everyone.
I would say the most confusing element of things for me was literally the sexual aspect of my sexual orientation, because I was in a relationship with a man for like 7 years, and I learned over time that like the dynamic that we had when we had sex was the dynamic that I wanted, but I didn't want to be the me in it. Then I slowly started to identify as a butch. I remember someone saying this, and I don't know who it was, but somebody looked at me and said, butch women couldn't get a man, so they're trying to be one. It was like a double
wow. Ooh, look at that. Wait just a goddamn minute. Huh. I wonder if there are some people out there that say that, but about feminine men. Huh. Which is funny to me, because people like J.K. Rowling, they pal around with a lot of self-identified lesbians and a lot of self-identified butch lesbians, all of whom are transphobic, and they will usually say that, oh no, like these trans women, they like women so much, but they can't get any, so they want to become the woman, you know, that kind of shit. It's crazy how transphobia directly impacts cis butch lesbians, and yet there are so many of them, especially in the UK, bruv, who will use rhetoric like that about trans women, but the same rhetoric is also used against butch lesbians who are cis. It's almost like bigotry hurts everybody involved, not just the person wielding it. It's sad, man. That's why intersectionality is very important. Because like you take an image of like the standard butch lesbian and you show that person, which is, you know, usually a cis woman who is just incredibly masculine. It's usually how they identify. You show that picture to a transphobic woman or a transphobe in general, but obviously in the context of what we're talking about with TERFs, right? The so-called gender criticals. And you tell them that that's actually a man, right? Like that's a trans woman. And they'll be like, oh my God, we could tell from a mile away. We could tell from a mile away that person, they got male physiognomy, whatever the fuck. They got the male skull shape, you know, they got male phrenology immediately. And it's like, it's literally a butch lesbian of which you claim to be one of the most stalwart defenders of because, oh, the trans women, they're taking away our lesbians, right? It's so sad, man. It's weird to work with groups that hate you. Well, I mean, that's what no intersectionality does to a motherfucker, right? That's what bigotry does to a motherfucker. It makes you act irrationally.
My name is Rachel, and I'm on the lesbian side. Heteronormativity in the sense of a set of norms that disciplines people and subjugates them is certainly a problem, especially in the way that it impacts girls who are supposed to have a man, or, as they say about butch women, try to be one. That's not to say that heterosexuality is a problem. It's not crazy for people to be heterosexual, just like it's not crazy that gay feeling and sexuality is also natural.
It would be interesting. I don't know if we do, but it would be interesting if there was a trans woman present here. There could be, like, nobody's identified in that way. So, like, we wouldn't know until somebody brought it up. But it would be interesting to see how the dynamic would change or might change if there was a trans woman, you know, in the vicinity.
The reason why I disagreed about being conflicted, there's some things I don't ever explain to other people. This is one of them. I don't explain to you who I take home. I don't explain to you what I do in my room. I don't explain any of that. I like women. I've been on dates with women. I've done what I do with women and men, but I'm not going to label myself just so somebody else can put me in a category. I just always wanted to know
That's
this.
fair.
Why is it so important that you are identified correctly? And the need to come out, the need to say, I am this, I am that.
Personally,
well, the reason, so I sympathize with this, right? Like, I have a similar take. Like, I've never done a big coming out post. I've never done any of that shit. Because, like, me, generally speaking, I don't care about my gender identity or sexuality at all. Like, I am pansexual, I am a non-binary trans person, but, like, it's not, like, the thing that I, like, talk about a lot about my, like, in reference to my person. Now, obviously, because of the content that I make and because I talk about gender and sexuality a lot in my program, then, yeah, obviously, my own identity comes up all the time. But generally speaking, like, I don't give a shit about it. But I think the reason why a lot of people do like doing themselves these coming out posts, having these labels, is because they don't feel seen otherwise. So, like, for instance, a person who sees another person whose identity they share, their coming out post, so let's say like a trans man comes out as being trans, another trans man who hasn't come out yet might see that post and be like, wow, there are other people out there like that share that label that I do, and that could help them feel better about themselves, feel less alone, might even provoke them to, you know, come out themselves, should it be something that they want to do. And that kind of representation is very beneficial for people. When it comes to me being a gender abolitionist, the labels do feel silly to me. But I do understand their utility as they exist now. I understand why people get upset when they are mislabeled. I understand why people get upset when they feel like they have to fit within certain parameters to be able to identify with a label, because we be living in a society. Yeah, we just live in a society. You know, all it takes is one little push. But it's an ideal future that these labels are not important at all, but it's just not where we're at right now. You got to play with the cards you're dealt.
I wasn't feeling the same way my friends were, and like when you get middle school, high school, college, I felt wrong. I was gonna disappoint my family. I was gonna be looked at my whole life as something less than. And if labels are not important to you, I think it's a personal thing. But for me, finding people that were saying like, this is why I feel this way, I'm like, I felt that way too.
True, hey, that's what I said. It's almost like, why the fuck am I even watching this video and reacting to it when you could just watch the video yourself? It's because I'm saying it. Listen, my opinions are based, and apparently so are some of the people on this panel. What can I say, really?
I also think representation is so important.
Yes.
Like personally, I grew up with a mom and a dad. Then my parents split up, and now my mom is married to a woman. And they were actually the first Black same-sex couple to be on the cover of Essence magazine. Wow. So I just feel
Huge.
I know, right? Representation is so important.
What if there were no labels?
So that's also really interesting too. And yeah, she's a fucking based gender label abolitionist. So there we go. But what I've always said for a long time, so there are a lot of people on the left that are like, oh my God, we need material change and, representation. It's not doing enough. It's not doing enough. We shouldn't really focus on it too much. I think that's silly. I think representation is good every time that it's done. However, it is not a suitable replacement. It's not going to, by itself, achieve the liberation of the oppressed groups that are being represented. But I don't think that we should wholesale abandon pushing for more representation in media because of that. I think that's foolish. The representation should work in tandem with actual material changes that would work toward the ultimate goal of liberating all oppressed people. So companies finding it to be less financially advantageous to be outwardly bigoted, like it used to be financially advantageous to be, they now see it that it actually hurts your brand. It hurts your bottom line if you are outwardly hateful as a company. So a lot of companies will just be covertly hateful by donating to politicians' campaigns who then go on to legislate hate. But they find it that in their outward persona for PR, it is now going to hurt them if they're bigoted outwardly, and it helps them if they're not. So they can either be neutral, or you can utilize the representation that you have in your brand for that kind of a gain. And, you would hope there would be some companies out there, some firms out there that actually do give a damn about the people that they're like doing this representation, this flowery rhetoric for, you know what I mean? And I'm sure there are some. But you'd have to look at their actual actions, right? Simply having a gay couple on a magazine cover isn't enough. There is more you could be doing as a company to help gay people. You could donate to politicians that will legislate pro-queer stuff that helps to achieve the equality of all oppressed people. You could also donate to organizations as a company in order to facilitate material change for the people that are subject to that oppression. But if you're not doing that as a company, well, then your representation, like, cool, it's there, but it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And I think understanding that dichotomy, understanding representation to be just one element of a broader project of liberation, it's still important, but it's not the broader project.
What if there were no labels? What would that look like?
There would be no community. There would be no, I feel like if there were no labels, it's sad to say, but I feel like a lot of people would be in the closet, would be in the dark.
That's the rest of the conversation we get on that. That's so annoying. So like when it comes to me subscribing to gender abolition as a long-term future project, like I said, I'm probably not going to live to see that day, right? If I decide to have kids one day, they're probably not going to see it either. It's a very long-term project, which is why it's really hard for people to conceptualize a society where these kinds of labels don't really exist. That being said, in a gender abolitionist society, I don't think that the labels would cease to exist. It's just that they wouldn't be as meaningful. So like, for instance, if we lived in a gender abolitionist society, well, people would still be feminine or masculine or androgynous. Those kinds of aesthetic presentation, that kind of like personality and characteristics like that would probably still exist. Just the labels that pertain to those things might not be as influential, might not be as like pivotal to the human experience. Identifying as a man or a woman would probably not really be a thing that a lot of people are engaging with or care about, and people would probably identify more with feminine, masculine, dominant, submissive, stoic, boisterous, active. There's a variety of other things that go into making a person who they are, and this broader label of man, woman, etc., it just seems to not have much utility anymore.
I believe traditional gender roles are important.
Nope. But, you know, you already expected that. I'd be curious to see if anybody walks forward and what justifications they give if they do. Oh, wow.
They're important to a degree.
Some of the lesbians have agreed. Interesting.
You know, if a man were to date a woman and they were to get married, you would expect the man to provide and the woman to, well, stay home or work and just raise the children.
But why would you expect that is my question. Why is that the expectation? So I think there is an argument to be made that because these societal expectations exist currently, if a cis man and a cis woman get into a relationship, those expectations will remain constant unless those two humans talk to each other about it, right? So this is something that you should clear up way before you're getting married. Like, if you are like a man, but you don't subscribe to the traditional roles that men are supposed to, as society deems, subscribe to, then you should be communicative with your partner about that. And if your partner's not into that, well, then you probably aren't going to stay together, because that's a weird disconnect unless some person's willing to change. But if they are willing to change, then it should be an active decision that they've made. So, like, I can understand where she's coming from in that because there are these societal expectations, if you don't communicate with each other, there could at some point present itself in a relationship that kind of a disconnect where, oh, well, women are supposed to do X and men were supposed to do Y in a relationship. And now, like, one of the people or both of the people don't want to do those things. Well, then you're going to run into issues, which is why to solve this concern, you talk to your partner about it way before you get together to the point where you're going to get married. It'd be affirmative for me? Well, yeah, no shit, because that's you. You're allowed to be a human being however you identify. So for your case, you told us that you're a trans woman. It's okay to be a woman that you are and then be interested in the traditional expectation for women. But once again, that traditional expectation should not be forced on all women. The individual women who are interested in those kinds of roles, more power to you. Engage with them as much as you want. Find those partners that are also interested in you being that way and whom you're interested in them being, you know, that traditional way or however you are attracted to your partner for being. Right? The issue presents itself when society tries to force everybody to stick to one strict avenue of, you know, existence and expression.
The reason I said that I agree is because the word role is that word for a reason. A role is a performance. So it's not, we don't need to naturalize it. We don't need to say women are this one and men are this one, or whatever your body is means your destiny is this. I just think that as social performances and ways of organizing our lives, we're not ever going to really get rid of the masculine, feminine thing. So I think acknowledging it so that we can think critically about it is what matters.
Well, if you say that we're never going to get rid of the masculine feminine thing, well, we're talking about gender roles. That was the question. Traditional gender roles. Gender being man, woman, whatever else. Usually when we have this conversation about gender roles, we're talking about men and women. And because of that, it's not simply masculine or feminine. Anybody can be masculine, anybody can be feminine, anybody can be androgynous, and it's a wide spectrum of where you fall on that scale. But when we talk about traditional gender roles, that means that for men, you have to be masculine, you have to provide. And then for women, you have to, you know, become impregnated, have the children, raise the kids, take care of the house. That's not masculinity or femininity. Those are the traditional gender roles for men and women. So, like, we're never going to get rid of masculinity and femininity or androgyny because those aren't gender roles. Those are aesthetic presentations. And, you know, she alluded to that with, oh, well, what's a role? It's a presentation. But the question said traditional gender roles. So I don't know. I don't know if that necessarily answered the question.
I believe we're in a space where we're starting to like tear down things that we're not entirely understanding or appreciating why it was built. We have to appreciate that we have to have some type of structure. Now, does that structure mean that because I'm born with a certain genitalia, this is the role I'm destined to be in? I don't know. It depends on which society you belong to. I don't want to do everything. I don't. That's why gender roles are important too. You're designating, this is what you do, this is what I do. I think that's okay.
So this person has a very complicated worldview, it would seem. Because she previously said that, why do we have labels at all? Like, why should I give a fuck about a label? I don't understand why people care about them. And then also said, well, yeah, but gender roles are important in that way, because, like, we have to have structure. I think it's just like this kind of like gender realism or whatever that is ingrained in people's heads, where like you can't look into a potential future where these gender roles don't exist or where gender itself doesn't exist, because everything around you is informed by those gender roles. That perception in society of, if you're a man, you do this, if you're a woman, you do that. It's very hard to look at an alternative perspective to that, because literally your entire life, everything around you has been informed by that thing. It's kind of like capitalist realism. It's very difficult, even for people who are sympathetic to alternate organizations, the economy, and society, to conceptualize and think about what it would look like to live in a post-capitalist society. Because there's really not that many examples. Your entire life, you've lived under capitalism. Your entire life, everything around you has been informed by capitalism. So it's very, very difficult to move your perception of the world into a hypothetical one where those things don't exist. I think it's the same for gender. Which is why, by the way, like Logic Interviewer posted in the chat earlier, apparently Sweden created gender-neutral preschools. That could be an informative way to try to give people a potential insight into what a future that is gender-neutral or gender abolitionist could potentially be like. If that preschool is gender-neutral, it's going to engage with the topic of gender as it pertains to the people there in a gender abolitionist way, like a gender-neutral way, literally, which is contrary to the expectation of almost literally every other place in society. So those kinds of things existing, non-binary or agender people existing, is very helpful. That representation is very helpful for trying to help inform people of that alternate potential future where these kinds of things that seem to cause a lot of people pain and discomfort aren't as important.
I am Marsha, and I am straight. I think a lot of the decisions that we make come from pre-programming. For one, I'm Jamaican born. In Jamaica, being homosexual is a no, we don't do that. There was only one way, you were
Cringe.
straight. That was it. So part of my decision is definitely my upbringing, but it's also from my experiences and realizing this is my fit. This works better for me.
I mean, I don't see why like certain household responsibilities should be defined by gender, especially because like I grew up with two moms, so I never was like, oh, like this is like my mom and my dad. Like this is my mom, and both my parents worked.
That's such a cool concept too. Like, so I grew up in a single mother household. My mom is a fucking gem, and I love her to death. My dad's also fucking poggers, too. But, like, the idea of having two of my mom, it's like, holy shit, dude, let's fucking go. That's sick. Now, obviously, you know, it's not all roses and rainbows. Like, everybody's got potential conflicts in their relationships and shit. But damn, that just seems neat. I don't know. I'm just like, I'm experiencing, like, some amount of, like, envy at, like, the concept of having, like, parents who are queer. You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Threw my ass in daycare, and it was just like, in a way, I guess I had two dads, if you want to like put it in that way. But like, I think it's like about a balance of like sharing responsibility, you know?
Well, but does saying that the gender roles are important mean that we're saying that they should be employed? Because I'm not saying that they should be forced on anybody. It's
is
just
what I was saying.
Whether and how much you want to like take it on.
They should not be forced.
I'm glad we're clarifying this right now. That's good. Because that would be one of the, you know, the things that I would worry about when it comes to how they answer the question.
Than everybody. When you were talking about doing the dishes and whatnot, my ex-husband was the person who stayed at home. I was the one who was at work.
Based.
He was the one that was doing the dishes and cooking.
And he's eating good. The fuck? I don't know why more men don't want to be like stay-at-home dads. Obviously, it's not like the easiest job in the world. No shit. But like, if you're interested in that lifestyle, go for it. The fuck? Like, if you're a cis heterosexual man and there is a woman out there that you find attractive, you get together, she's got like an exceptional job and she's also interested in you fulfilling that role and you also want to fulfill that role, let's go. That sounds sick. Sounds pretty pog to me, man.
The world would be a better place without men.
Can I get an amen? Now that's what I call one of the best questions Jubilee has ever asked. That should be a statement of fact, not posed as a question. I'm just kidding. Some, I assume, are good people. Though I will say, you could answer yes to this question with the caveat being, I'm talking about a hypothetical gender abolitionist future that's a project into the long term, right? You know, I think that the world would be a better place without any gender item. No women, no men. Get them out of here. I'm done with it. I'm tired of it. Let's just move away from gender entirely over time, over the period of multiple fucking generations. But I don't know that that's what we're gonna get.
Oh, I was just like thinking historically, like men have been the one that have caused wars and created a place where women didn't have the same respect or capacity to be heard and seen.
I think what you would be looking to address then is not like the existence of men, right, when answering this question, but rather the behavior of, the actions of, and what informs those behaviors and actions, which, you know, buzzword time, it's toxic masculinity. Wow. Which, before any right-winger who might be watching this, if you've made it here this far, I salute you. The idea that a toxic masculinity exists implies that a positive masculinity also exists. We wouldn't have a reason to call it toxic masculinity if that is what we thought all masculinity was. We would just call it masculinity. We call it toxic masculinity because these are elements of masculinity that seem to hurt more than they help. Addressing that would make men a lot better. They would be able to fulfill a positive masculine archetype and everybody would be vibing.
Hi, my name is Jamie and I am on the lesbian side. I think it just comes down to that I know I'm capable of being with men and I find them attractive and like I could see myself being with them sexually, but like romantically, I don't think I could ever really connect to a man.
Well, there you go. So what would that be? That would be bi or pansexual, homo-romantic for a person who identifies as a woman, so a lesbian, right? Potentially. Like, I'm not trying to label this person, but...
With men's power, so to speak, it gets like almost too extreme. Like, you know, look what's happening today with the old white men trying to control abortion or women's bodies. But today, I think we would still need them in the world just to have at least a different perspective.
Yep. I don't think it'd be better without men, but I do think men need to be a little more educated on things.
True.
Even how we're treated in school by boys, like growing up was always...
If they hurt you, they like you. If they yank on your pigtails.
So I don't think we should like abolish all men, but I do think there needs to be some leveling out.
I think that definitely we're getting there. I feel like because of what men have done in the past, you know, in our history, I feel like that's why they have this superiority over all of the women. But I do think that we are here because of what we've gone through.
Nice. I like the term gender anarchy. When it comes to that term, I don't think it's a good one. Mostly because nobody knows what the fuck anarchy means. To most like normies out there, anarchy just means like broken windows and like people throwing Molotovs and like riots in the street. Because like they don't actually know what it means. So I don't know, I think gender abolition, for me anyway, is a better term. Wouldn't gender anarchy just mean the abolition of the patriarchy? Because the gender hierarchy is the only thing I can think of in that context. Well, how about we do this, okay? How about we do this? Anarchy. A state of disorder due to absence or non-recognition of authority. Absence of government and absolute freedom of the individual regarded as a political ideal. Surely these aren't the best definitions. What the fuck? Well, I guess it depends on anarchy and in what context. Like if you think of like an anarcho-communist society, right? You're thinking of the abolition or the flattening of all unjust hierarchies. So a moneyless, classless, stateless society, and then some. Anarchy is a society being freely constituted without authorities or a governing body. It may also refer to a society of group of people that entirely rejects set hierarchy. Yeah, so I guess it depends on exactly how you mean it. But it is true that the current hierarchy that we have for gender is an unjust one. And it would be anarchic, I suppose, to flatten that hierarchy. But does the flattening of that hierarchy necessarily entail abolition? It wouldn't. Because like the gender would still be there. If we simplify it to the flattening of unjust hierarchies, then you could look at the unjust hierarchy of class and want to flatten that, meaning that everybody is of the same class, hypothetically, when it comes to socioeconomics. And in that way, it's just one class now, so it might as well not exist. But I don't think that's necessarily the same as gender, though. Maybe that's not the best example. I don't know. I like gender abolitionists better. Personally, it's more to the point for my worldview. Like I would like to have in the future happen an actual abolition of gender to the point where everybody just is who they are. And you can still describe people as masculine, feminine, and the things associated with that. but it would be on a contextual person-to-person basis, and the gender expectations wouldn't exist, obviously, because gender wouldn't. So nobody would be forced to be a certain way based upon their biological sex and, you know, how their assumed gender would be as it pertains to it. Anyway, that was a pretty good video. I quite enjoyed it, and I also could not shut the hell up. That was a 19-minute video, and I'm pretty sure I've been going at it for like 2 hours now. It's 2 a.m. I don't know how that happened. I'm pissed. This video's CONURE is actually 2 people because I'm an absolute moron, and last time I forgot. So in another rare double CONURE callout, we have Drawing Guardy and Belt Aloud. Thanks so much for the support to both of you. Keep on keeping on. Hopefully I don't mess up again in the future, but perhaps this will be a way for you two to connect and maybe a friendship could form. Who knows what the future holds. If you'd like to be the next CONURE callout, all you gotta do is follow me on Twitter at CONURECC, retweet my video links when they go live. Remember to subscribe to the channel, put all notifications on, and hit the bell. Appreciate that as well. Make sure you don't miss a video. Leave a like if you'd like. Comment something cool down below about how your mom is also a lesbian, or perhaps not, or if your dad might be a lesbian. Take it easy.